be signed off next week, and then the rest of the applications will be pushed through the SABC without prejudice in the process. Just explain to the layman who doesn't understand what that means for the application for the 10% tariff application, and what difference that would make to the steel industry. Thank you.
Okay, we'll make a note of that. And then the third question.
From the SABC News. My question is directed to ArcelorMittal specifically.
It's a joint press conference.
Yeah, but I mean, you have been in the forefront of this crisis. I mean, like, let me just put out my question first. My question to you, like, the government say on condition that government is, the industry doesn't raise prices. But you know, an issue that has been going on for almost a decade, especially by ArcelorMittal, is the refusal to scrap import price parity. The government has been asking you. Now, on this instance, is it going to be a trade-off with you scraping the import parity pricing in exchange for your applications to be approved by? What's the trade-off if it does nothing?
Okay, thank you. So let's go back to the first question on the training layoff scheme. Can we ask someone from Labour to possibly talk to?
But the training layoff scheme, that will be particular to each scenario, each company that's in process. It provides for levies to be paid to workers where they don't earn a salary. That levy is capped. So our engagement with government with that special task team is to speed those processes up and possibly to look at that cap and the administration of that scheme. In each individual case, each individual retrenchment, whether or not that will be applicable will depend on the discussions and negotiations in those processes.
Right, so the government will be paying the levy. So yes, retrenchments is going ahead, but then people will be paid by a levy that I assume is from the government while they're being retrained, in principle.
Yes, the fund is administered by the UIF. It's lying there, but it does provide for retrenchment being placed in hold. That cannot be guaranteed in most of the instances we are now at the moment. So it will depend on each case.
Okay, and then the issue on the 10% duty.
Yeah, so there's a regulatory process to be followed. So you need to complete documentations, you need to answer questions, you need to go through a public process, you need to go through interview processes, so it takes time. So the commitment from government is that the first application submitted in November of last year will be approved by the end of this week. And then all the other applications which ourselves and many of the other companies have submitted, another, I think it's around 10, will be approved as quick as possible. But then the most important ones are the anti-dumping duties, because those are the ability to go above the 10% tariff rate. And those again are going to take time, and that's why we worry about it, and that's what we're talking about. And we're saying that in the longer term, there's good solutions on the table, but there's no quick fix today.
Paul, could I ask you then just to answer the third question with regards to the issue of import parity pricing?
Yeah. Perhaps the gentleman who asked hasn't been listening. We have been for 9 months talking about changing our pricing model. And we've been engaging with many spheres of government to make sure that that model fits what's required. I can say this, that in the world today, globally, there exists no definition of a developmental price for steel. What exists in the world today is import duties and export duties on your raw materials to control your primary steel industry. That being said, though, we are working on some models currently with government to have an appropriate price of steel from an AMSA perspective for the steel industry.
Okay. All right. First gentleman in the front, then yourself, and then the lady.
I just want to know, these commitments that's made, most of it is dependent on decisions by people outside of us, parties outside of this room, mainly bureaucracy, the state and Transnet and others, state officials. Did you get are these commitments firm enough to make business decisions going forward? You are at the stage where you need to make decisions. were there agreed processes to implement these decisions through ITAC and Transnet?
Okay, and Jacob, yes?
Yes, you keep saying this is good in the medium and long term, but it doesn't change the picture right now. What is the situation right now? Last week there was some reports that SABC could shut down Pandar Bay within weeks. Is that how bad the situation is? With Ebras, does it mean that you're going ahead with your settlement line, you're trading those 1,000 people and so on? This is not going to change that at all. And what is the situation with Score Metal exactly? What is the current situation?
Okay. Can we just take the third question from the lady with the
It was exactly to Highfield Everest. What are they going to do with the situation at the moment?
Okay, so let's start off with the question asked by the gentleman with regards to how firm are these commitments on the part of government?
Yeah, I think let me start by saying that I think let's be mindful that this is not only a problem of AMSA, Score Metals and Highfield and Cape Gate and all those things. I mean, these are big companies that are going through the processes that have been announced, but it's an industry-wide phenomenon. I mean, there are many small companies, right, that are going through the same process that's happening now. In fact, we talk about a jobs bloodbath. We're talking about an impending company bloodbath. There are many companies, big and small, that will not survive this. And I think, as a country, we should not necessarily say it's just one or two companies. This is a fundamental issue that talks to the structure of our economy and the structure of our sector at this point in time. Companies as we stand now, right, because of the vagaries of the market and the negative market externalities, companies are highly indebted. They are actually battling to survive. We see that within our own association as CIFSA. So here we need to distinguish the short-term issues and the long-term issues. I think with all the will and the effort in the world, the short-term issues, I think it's too late to address them. That's my view, right? Because remember, as South Africans, we're always optimistic. And we've been so optimistic that we've come to a point where we can't do much about the short term. But these interventions are necessary, and I think they're very useful to solve the long-term perspectives. Remember, we're talking about protecting the whole industry here. And what we're doing with government, step by step, all these actions, there's processes that are in motion, they are delaying, yes. But if we address them and address the challenges quick enough, we'll be able to make sure that the industry as a whole is there for the future. So please, it's not an AMSA problem, it's not a Highfield problem, it's not a Score problem. There are many small companies, which keep on doing these things every day. They get rid of 5 people, 10 people, but if you add them up, they're significant. So it is a crisis that I've never seen. It's unprecedented in my history within the steel industry, because it's like a perfect storm. And all these things that have not been addressed in the past, we now have to face, we are forced now to address them. But we're not losing hope. We are mindful that the intervention by the government, the business, and labor will be useful in addressing the long-term and medium to long-term impact. If we do nothing today, there's no industry to talk about. I mean, there are other short-term actions that will worry us, but we have to respond and be dynamic and agile, but focus on the long-term impact as well.
Thank you. I think that answer addresses essentially all 3 questions, 2 of which were the same. Are there any other questions? Okay, yourself, and then the lady next to you. You had a turn already, so let's just get the lady. Let's get yourself first.
Angelo Koppler from China Central Television. To what extent did the dumping of Chinese steel exacerbate this perfect storm that you're talking about?
Yes.
My first question is, the absence of a short-term solution or ideas around what can be done in the short term, is that because there is absolutely nothing to be done, or parties in that meeting could not agree on what can be done? My second question is whether CIFSA has, as an industry, consistently found a figure of work by current arrangements in the different companies?
Okay, then the third question.
Right. The just clarity on the 10% duty that the government agreed to. Is that a blanket tariff on any import, or is that on specific products?
Okay, thank you. One more question.
Yeah, and a follow-up question on this issue of the 10%. Now, it's not clear whether the government is agreed with 10%. That it is guaranteed that it will increase tariffs by 10%. When you put on your application, it might succeed or not succeed. Has an agreement been reached with government? And also the question of the parastatals. Is there a commitment from government to buy steel from the, especially when you look at Mitsubishi is using Asian steel, not local steel. So has there been a commitment from parastatal to source steel from local producers?
Okay, thank you. Paul, can I call on you again? Okay.
Yeah, I'll answer the duty question. Yes, there's commitment from government to apply the bound rates on primary steel. What does that mean? That means that there are rates agreed with the World Trade Organization for all the categories of steel that are produced in South Africa at a primary level, and to move the rates from 0% to 10%, as is allowed in terms of the World Trade Organization. But in order for them to get there, you need to follow the process. So the commitment is 100% there to do that.
And then anyone from the table, there was a question with regards to the effect that the dumping of steel by China has had on the industry. Mr. Johnson?
What was the question?
Yeah, I mean, the analysis we've done is that this year there's two things affecting the industry. Firstly, the market, from our perspective, everybody gets excited if you use the word recession. But from a steel perspective, we're in a steel recession. Why do I say that? Because the steel consumption this year and what we're seeing till the end of the year levels of 2009, when we actually had a financial recession. So from a steel perspective, it's very low. But in addition to that, in 2007, imports into this country were 7%. Sorry, 2009 was 7% of steel consumption. Today, it's close to 30%. There's a surge of imports. A lot of those imports is China.
Any other questions?
Question about the numbers.
Sorry, my apologies. Did you not ask a question about the effect of Chinese? Sorry, but your question was regards to the global
jobs. I think about the absence of a short-term solution, whether that because there was none found or there was no recession. And the second one is about whether the general number of the workers will be affected by retrenchment in the short term.
Well, I think maybe the SABC economists can tell us about the numbers. Maybe you can have a first on the numbers. Potential numbers.
Answer from here.
Yeah.
We think directly about 10,000 in the basic ferrous sector, which is where the big companies are. You must remember that we are highly dependent on what happens in mining, what happens in the auto sector, and what happens in construction, which is linked to the infrastructure spending. And over those four, if one doesn't recover the other, if we are each other's producers and suppliers, then it could be much higher, even 3 or 4 times higher than that over the period towards the end of the year.
Morris?
I just want to add, within the current consultation processes that we are in, obviously employers' unions do everything we can to try and save jobs. But when you face, for example, in terms of a partial or a plant closure, that plant will close down, not much you can do to save those jobs. But certainly within those processes, there's a real effort going out 100% to try and save what we can.
Yes.
Question for Evan, seeing as just joined us. How militant are you going to get as trade unions in this whole conversation that you're having now? It's all sounding nice and warm and fuzzy, but at what point do you say, enough's enough now, and it's time to take our arguments to the streets?
Just one more question.
give us an idea, an indication of the effect of the weakening of the rand over the last couple of weeks on the current situation?
Okay. We'll think about that one whilst Mr. Jim addresses the question around militancy.
Well, I mean, I think people must accept that the approach we took to state government is but the first phase of saying to everybody, something has to be done on an agent basis. It's not like all companies that are here have been speaking to government. Government has been aware that there is a crisis that needed to be addressed in the steel industry. Companies have filed application to ITEC. They will refute and reject that it should take a year to be able to increase the tariffs and protect a bleeding industry like we have currently. And I'm saying first phase because we're very clear that what we can't win in the boardroom, we can't win in the street, the other way around. And I'm just saying we have resolved that we're going to go all out. These workers are important now when they have these jobs, but these workers take care of communities. We are mobilizing workers, we're mobilizing communities. We will be occupying Pretoria, even with these talks that are taking place, to basically make sure that government and everybody must move with speed to take the necessary decisions that must be taken. And I must say, there is a big debate in the union that ISCO, which is ArcelorMittal today, has been government in the past used to basically own that particular company. The big debate is, why should government, especially in the light of what we are confronted with, do not consider to take back that company of the state? Because China, which everybody is mourning about, which at the beginning, even before we met the ministers, you had two ministers who were saying, look, we're doing business with China, we can't be appearing to be reckless in dealing with them. Our position is very simple. We want to protect South African jobs, South African industries. China, in the past couple of weeks, have devaluated its currency today and the following day twice. And why they were doing so? They were doing it to protect their own jobs. They were doing so that they maintain their position, continuing to dump steel, and meaning that saving their own jobs. We expect the same. And I'm saying one of the things that very soon we're very frank about is that we will be demanding that we need our ISCO back. Because if you lose the steel industry in this country, you must forget. And I must say that we're extremely very worried. The talk about nuclear, if indeed it were to be executed by government at 1 trillion, that is much talked about, we might save still now with a few measures, but if the cost of electricity is going to shoot up the roof because now we've got a nuclear that would have cost the national fiscus $1 trillion, it might be that you must forget about smelters, they will close. It must be that you might forget about aluminium that will basically close. And those companies like Mercedes-Benz will need aluminium steel to be able to produce the cars that they produce, targeting 70% local content, might have to shut. And therefore, we are dealing with a national crisis, and we're going to treat it as such. We don't want an empty militancy. Our militancy takes into account sitting down with employers. Yes, all employers who are around the table who worked with us to government, they have served us with Section 189. And any person who wants to retrench jobs, he's launching an attack on us. So on one case by cases, we're going to be on each other's loggerheads to say, indeed, must you retrench so many workers? There's no NUMSA in Solidarity that have accepted to lose not a single job. That's why there's Section 189. We would have to advance alternatives. But for purposes of meeting government this Friday, we have to sit down and have a common agenda and speak in one voice, because it will be very rare if government will not be able to move forward when in all other sectors, ITEC has always said in government, if social partners have a common agenda and they say increase the tariffs within the bounds of the WTO, we should be able to do so. And that's what we have done on Friday. And government have committed 2 DGs to work with us. I think the test of the pudding is on the evening. The couple of few weeks and few days from now about making sure that what must be done is done very quick is what is going to be the challenge of this particular process. So we have no guarantees about what's going to happen, except the fact that we must struggle to defend the existing capacity for manufacturing.
Thank you. Can we just get a comment from our economists on the devaluation of the rand?
If I may, well, if the currency depreciates, of course, imports get more expensive. That hasn't done much the last year and a half. We saw earnings of exports improving, but not volume. So that didn't do much. The uncomfortable fact is that it's driven by what happens internationally. Firstly, the American dollar that's strengthening, and in yuan that is depreciating, and that in turn has been influenced by what happens in the world markets. America is recovering a little bit better. Everybody wants to be back in America. The Chinese economy is struggling, and that's the reason for them trying to get their exports more deeper into the world market. So it's almost like South Africa is floating on a very rough sea, like a cork, which is a frustration, but it is what happens. The hope is, and what we've seen over the last year and a half, and which has been quite a change in the normal reaction of the South African economy, and specifically inflation, after a depreciation, is that inflation rises faster. That seems to have slowed down dramatically. The pass-through, is what the Reserve Bank is talking about, is much less. The converse for us is that our prices can't go up. So it cuts you both ways. So not much. It's a very psychological depressant, if you can put it that way. If your exchange rate keeps on depreciating, the conference, it's a bit of a conference indicator. But it cuts both ways.
Thank you. Are we covered with question? One more question at the back, and then we'll two questions, and then we'll call it. Gentleman at the back.
Immediate trade remedies for steel, urgent advancement of government beneficiation strategy. Please could you clarify what that means?
Okay, and then SABC.
Yeah, it's a clarification. It's not clear. Has there been an agreement to put a moratorium on retrenchments? Then, because it's not clear on that question. What happens if these companies that are sitting together with you now decide to retrench workers? Like the GSA said, they've already said Section 8. Where do we stand in terms of retrenchment?
Okay.
And then, sorry, so if I can get one last question. I think my colleague asked it here, have the SOEs made a commitment to buy local steel from these companies, the state-owned enterprises?
Okay. There was a last hand. Lady, yes.
With Mr. Jim talking about wanting us to go back, is ArcelorMittal happy with that kind of
Okay, let's start with beneficiation. Oh, you want to?
Well, I don't expect them to be heavy. It's true. I mean, that's a NUMSA position. We want nationalization of strategic minerals, and steel is one of those. And we think that I must not be beating about the bush. We think that we want ISCO back. There's no two ways about it. Of course, they own it, they control it. Government would have to find a way of getting it back to be a strategic asset for the country, to champion manufacturing and industrialization. Our take is that if government were to own and control it, it will not need me marching to Pretoria. Government itself, it would have to protect what belongs to the nation. It means they will increase tariff, they will protect, they will do everything else to make sure that what belongs to the economy is protected, which is what China is doing. China can devalue currency because it owns and controls it. And why must we continue to be, walking around the challenge that is in front of us? So I don't expect a consensus between us and ArcelorMittal on that. We're raising the second issue is around SOEs. We were very categorical that we've been hearing that there is huge public infrastructure spent. Everybody says it's in the pipeline. We're saying, where is the pipe? We think that now is the time for government to ensure that these SOEs should be putting together a stimulus package that must be able to turn around the economy that, as we speak, is basically bleeding, it's very bad. for us to be able to create jobs. Government must spend. That's why we have called for designation. That's why we have called for making sure that every steel that is being used in whatever project, it must be bought locally so that we can boost the economy. Section 189, well, one of the things that we have pushed government to work with us was around training layoff schemes. We are going to have very tough negotiations. We are served with Section 189. Our attitude is that if government moves with us with speed, we do call for moratorium on this retrenchment that employers have served us with Section 189. But they didn't serve us with Section 189 because they were happy to do what they are doing. So it is going to be in the theater of each and every consultation that we are going to have with all the companies that have served us with Section 189. Our attitude is that it could be that in some companies we'll be able to say, don't retrench workers now, take them to a training layoff scheme. They must be trained, they must be paid, and so that we delay the impact, the negative impact of retrenchment until the economy recovers. But we can't do that with a government that is not moving very swiftly in terms of taking the kind of measures that are necessary. We are going to fight retrenchment. There is no consensus between us and employers that they will stop retrenchment because we went together to Pretoria. That isn't the theater of engagement that is taking place with each and every company that have served us with Section 189. But I think everybody, both social partners, understand that something has to be done very quick to turn around the negative picture. I'm not sure whether I want to take the question on beneficiation.
Yeah, I think, and it answers the ISCOR. One thing we agree on. Let's say what we agree on, and it answers the question. Not one of the CEOs sitting here today likes retrenching people. Let's just be very clear. Let's just be very clear. In South Africa of today, do you think we sit here wanting to retrench people? That's wrong. But we have companies to protect and we have limited financial resource. On the issue of nationalization, I prefer to use the word strategic. So there are minerals that are strategic to this industry, coal, iron ore. How do we make sure that as a country we use those metals and those inputs appropriately so that the strategic steel industry can have an appropriate price? And that is what needs to be looked at with government. How do you make these industries more strategic in nature?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for your time. If you want some water, some tea and coffee, there's a pause area across the passage. To our representatives and colleagues from the trade unions, thank you. To the CEOs, thank you for your time. And to the media, once again, thank you. And if you want to have any further questions one-on-one, please feel free to approach anyone. Thank you, Rich. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Just we serve you for 2 years. Ask her to 30 seconds.
It's kind of what you said. It's kind of get you out in a one-on-one.
You have a card, so that's good.
Very
I'm right.